Where's our friend Mandy? How can Mandy not be here? I guess she's allowed. All right. Okay, we're recording. Welcome to LiveFULLy, everyone. God, the first quarter of the year is like over almost. Tonight, we're going to talk about a little heart surgery. We'll work on the heart. So the topic for tonight, and I didn't have a nice little pretty post to put together, but what I want to talk about tonight is forgiveness. And I put a few things together that I want to go through as far as like some steps towards self-forgiveness, but I want to be really transparent and vulnerable tonight because this has been a real struggle for me. And then especially like very recently, I got kind of caught up in playing out an emotional and behavior pattern that has been a really familiar one in my life, and I beat myself up really hard for it. And so it was just that, you know, it's been like days of just feeling really heavy and sorry, and what I didn't realize I was doing until later, I was working with my spiritual coach on it, and because I literally was like, I do not know how to get past this. Like, I continue to do this, you know, the same pattern over and over again. And I don't know what to do about it. And I just feel awful about it. And then, you know, it happens again. And what I was doing was, one, playing the victim. And it was really subtle. It was really tricky, but that's what it was. And two, playing the martyr. And so it was this big disappointment in myself and these like super high expectations of like, how come I haven't gotten this yet? I haven't figured it out. Which really doesn't really feel like a victim, you know, when you know, at first it's like, oh, I don't feel like I'm like being a victim, but it really was the more we like dug into it. And I started thinking about, you know, patterns around eating and the length of time, you know, with obesity, like that these patterns can play out over and over and over again, that can be due to like a million different things. You know, different situations, different experiences that we've been through. And I thought that this process of self-forgiveness was a really good one to address in this group. One, because it helps me heal my own crap, which is the joy of hosting your meeting. But two, I think it's really pertinent. I mean, it's pertinent, you know, when I look at it in my own life, and obviously, you know, in others, I think everybody finds some benefit in going through it. So the first thing I want to do is go through just some of the steps that I pulled out on, like, well, here's how you even get started. Because a lot of times it's like, we know, you know, we'll talk about like what the kind of the process is of going through it. But a lot of times, like, it's not that hard to identify like when you need to forgive yourself, or, you know, for what. But it's like that process of like, well, how do I go about that? Like, well, okay, I forgive you. Like, is that enough? You know what I mean? Like, it's like, well, no, it's a process. I mean, you've been doing these same patterns for a really, really long time. So, you know, how do you get past and not do those anymore? So I'm going to go through the steps first. And then there's like a 4-minute video that I want to show like toward the end after we have some discussion about these. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, can everybody can see it? Is it big enough, or do I need to press play? Good. Okay, there we go. All right. Okay, so the first one, and I have some notes that I'm going to be looking down, but is get clear on what your morals and values are right now. And so one of the things that the challenge is, you know, we think about like all the patterns or the experiences or the certain things that we have done wrong or continue to do wrong. But it's like, what are the things that really matter to you right now? And values was something that I also have been looking up recently. And there's a list. You could literally Google core values. I went through, if any of you guys have gone through like a Mechanic to Millionaire workshop with Dave MacArthur, his wife Carrie actually does an amazing education on core values. And it really, like, there are certain words, certain values that will stick out to you. That'll be like, ooh, that one's really important to me. And other ones that aren't. But what I found going through that was that some of the things that I said, oh, that's really important to me, were things that I'm out of alignment with. And so when it comes to self-forgiveness, you know, this first one, I'm like, what are my morals and values right now? Like, and how do I line up with those? Was a really good way to kind of like, and some of these steps, you guys, are pretty confronting. I mean, like, that's why I said it's like heart surgery, because it's not like a little walk in the park. I mean, this is stuff that can bring up some pretty painful feelings and emotions and, you know, patterns that have been really hard to get past. So what are those values? And I can post the list that I have from Carrie, and I actually am going to reach out to her to see if she would be willing to just, you know, come on and guest and talk about it a little bit. But you should for sure, like, that one of those workshops is like, you deserve to do one of their workshops if you haven't ever done one. And then the second thing is realize that hold on. So I don't want to forget my notes. I got some good nuggets. Okay, so on this one, it says the reason that most of us feel guilt or shame for actions done in the past is because those actions are not in line with our current morals and values. So when we start to feel like, you know, God, I feel so guilty, you know, that I had a bad day, that I had a cheat day, or I feel, you know, I'm feeling like shameful about how I've been, you know, acting, or the way that I've been eating, the choices I've been making. It's because really inside, our soul knows that that is not how we want to be. So when we repeat those patterns, it's like what we're doing is like this. Right? And like we feel that, like, you know, I feel so guilty. That's our conscience, our soul, our spirit that's saying, yeah, we know that you don't want to do that anymore. So getting really clear on like writing down what those things are is huge, because then you can really take a look at like, ooh, where have I broken that with myself? Okay, the second one, realize that the past is the past, and I put it in parentheses, my own little edition, means owning your own SHIT, and then let it go. So one of the things about, you know, we talk about owning your story or like owning your crap, is that you can get stuck in that ownership mode and not let it go. And so it's good to be able to take responsibility and accountability, that if you have a pattern that is bad, it's like bad meaning like not healthy, unkind, you know, to yourself. I mean, this stuff can apply to other people, but I kind of like, it was in this mode of like self-forgiveness. But if you sit there with it too long, and you start to like, I am it too much, then you can't move past it if you don't let it go, because it's like, oh, I'm really owning this story, and this is, I'm a stress eater, and I know that I do this and I do that. And what happens is we get so attached, and a lot of it's subconscious, right? Like we talk about it and we don't even realize that we're saying it, that we're like making this a part of our identity and not letting that thing go. So like, I am this. So the thing that I just, wanted to say about number 2 is just like, be careful in that ownership process to not own it so much to the point that you can't disown it. Does that make sense? Okay. Number 3, create a redo. So the notes here is write down how you would have done things differently if you had the skills back then that you do now. So giving yourself a redo is really just kind of admitting that it's like, you know what, I just didn't have the skills at the time. And it kind of takes away that heaviness of like, I'm bad, right? Or like, my whole life, ... like it's this thing that's really that you make it be about you, rather than, I realized that I was doing the best that I could, which, maybe wasn't that great, but I wasn't conscious of it. I wasn't like doing it on purpose, like to make myself really unhappy. Like I just didn't know what I didn't know. And so, giving yourself a redo is kind of drawing that line in the sand and being able to say, like, I allow that's how it was in the past. But this process of like writing down, like, well, how would I do that differently now? So let's pretend that like now that I know better, how would I do things differently? Because we do have a chance to do that every single day. So like, how would I do that differently? Okay, next one, cut yourself a break. It's like, give yourself a freaking break already. This is still kind of piggybacking on the whole, as long as you learn from it, then it's all good. Like it wasn't in vain. You can really kind of tell yourself like, this is just an area like where I'm building my skills. And so giving yourself a break of rather than like, my whole life I've been like this and I can't figure this thing out. And then the scale is, never seems to go down. And it's this, like this ownership of where you've gone wrong, and to be able to just like give yourself a break. You were doing the best you could at the time. And then start new now. So, this one is really about acting in accordance with those morals and values, like starting now. So maybe those are different, and they can be different next month, next year. They don't have to be the same, values your whole life, but replacing the negative behaviors and thoughts with more appropriate ones that are congruous with your morals and values. So this one really piggybacks on number 1, that it's like, once you decide what those things are that you really relate to, that you say, these are things that are really important in my life, then write it down. Like, what are ways that you can actually behave in congruency with those things? So if one of mine is trustworthiness, for example, because I've been doing a lot of work on, I have trust issues. And I don't mean like little ones. I mean like, I don't really trust anybody at the end of the day. And when you think about life and people and situations, experiences being, everything is a mirror to teach us something. To have an aha, a real deep one of, how much do I not trust myself if that level, that value of trustworthiness is so big for me, that it's like, man, if you break this, if you tell me one thing and you don't mean it, you're not authentic, like that is it. Like you're donezo with me. And then when I turned that around on myself and looked at that moral of like, how do I behave as far as like trusting myself? Like, do I trust my intuition? Do I trust my gifts? Do I trust the way that I show up for people? Or do I question myself all the time? Like, how do I behave? And so actually, I mean, this is a big one. Think about like, what can I do differently to actually show up and behave differently? Like if that's because I'm not just going to automatically start trusting people, nor like just start trusting myself. And so, when we think about like our eating habits and like, what are our values? What are things that are still really related to those patterns of like, that you can turn around and really look at, like use as a mirror. And there's guys, I mean, these lists of values, of core values, I mean, there's hundreds of them, and you don't have to have like, sometimes there's an exercise of Carrie's where she says, pick 20, then take it down to 10, then take it down to 5, and then really look at those 5 and work on those. Even if you have 1 or 2, like start somewhere of like, how are these values that I say are important actually, like, I'm not doing those. And here's how it shows up in the way that I choose, like, to be healthy or not healthy. Like that, we're out of congruency here. So I really like that one a lot. Okay, the next one is really work with your past patterns, but not individual regrets. And so a lot of times we carry certain situations, or they stick in our head, certain experiences that we just can't seem to forgive and get past, whether it's about somebody else and it involves what someone else, we say somebody else did to us, or something that, we just can't get past of like, God, I feel like I've forgiven myself, but I still keep beating myself up for that one thing, right? Like I still can't believe that I hurt these people the way that I did, or, or yourself. Like I can't believe that I would do something so unkind, to myself. And it's like, what this is saying is like, don't, like let those individual regrets go and try to focus on like, where do you see patterns of behavior, continue to show up for you. And really kind of, write those down. Because when you really start digging into these patterns is where you start to see when it happens, why it happens, who it happens around, how you're feeling emotionally when it happens. Like those patterns look real familiar when you start like really digging into them and writing them down. And then the next one, turn the page already. So once you've kind of gotten there, and it's, it's kind of back to like when you like own your crap, it's like, that's great. And you guys, I can remember when I first started really digging into personal development, like I just want to know why, like I'm a 20 questions, no matter what it is, like I'm going to ask you 20 questions about it, because I just like need to know everything that I can. And so when I first started this journey and I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to really start like working on myself and like, emotionally, like I'm going to get better and do better and live a better life. And I had all these grand plans, but first I was like, I got to figure out like where I went wrong. And I started digging into it, and I wanted to know everything. Like I was like, do a psychic reading. I want to go to counseling. I wanted to try everything that you had. I wanted to everything. Because I just needed to get to the bottom of it. But then it shifted, and I think it was Cindy Murphy that I first heard it from, who I was like, I just really need to know like where all this started. Like, was it my mom's fault that I'm like this, or was it that first relationship with that dude who just got me off on the wrong track, and so every relationship after that was terrible. And then it made me start eating. And the reason why that I was 100 pounds overweight for 15 years was because of that guy. Or, you know, like I needed to know what it was that had me emotionally making these decisions that were really harmful to me, like especially with regard to my health. But then Cindy said, Jason, you'll have to tell her this if you see her. She said, I don't care why anymore. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, don't you want to know like where it all started? She's like, no, I just want to get on with it. And it was like, that was the next step in the process, was if you stay there too long, you're not turning the page to allow yourself to step into, you know, this new place of life that can look different, right? Because we're holding on to like, why about the past, when really it's like, that might give you a little bit of insight or clarity you know, about the choices that you've made so far. But at the end of the day, like the past is the past, right? Like it's, you don't go back and have the same thing again. Like you just move forward. So turn the page already. And then the last one is just really about self-love, that I just said, you know, be your best friend. And so one of the biggest things that I'm learning, you know, really, and we talk about it a lot here, is compassion. Especially for ourselves, and just allowing. I just love that idea of I just didn't have the tools or the skill set built up, and maybe I still don't. You know, like maybe I'm still in progress to like it's better than it was before, but I can see that, you know, because I saw this pattern happen again, like I'm still working on it. But that's like having compassion that like it didn't take a week to develop all of these patterns and like these emotional, you know, like emotionally trapped situations. It took like a freaking half of a lifetime. So to think that we should just be able to identify something, these patterns, and be like, okay, I see it, I'm done with it, like I should be over it by now. Like, no, it's a process. I mean, Morgan, we talk about your journey all the time of like, if it's 5 years, 6 years, you know, it wasn't 2 weeks, it wasn't a month, it wasn't a year, it was many years of over and over, working on it, building the tools, you know, like building your skill set. Going through it over and over again, like having those breaking moments. And so, you know, just to remember, like, be your best friend. Because one thing I think about too is that if I wronged any one of you, I did something and you guys are like, man, you really hurt me when you did that. What would you say? Literally, like if I did something that really hurt you and I came back and I was like, I'm sorry, what would you say to me? I'm not going to move on until somebody answers this question.
I would say it's okay.
Perfect. It is not okay. And so the video that we're going to watch is about forgiveness, is the difference between saying it's okay and I forgive you.
Oh.
Right? Because, and what I read too is about our children. When kids do something to another child and you teach your child to say, it's okay, that person, like, well, they, you know, they didn't mean it. It's okay. It's not okay. Like you did something like that was hurtful, but I forgive you. And it's learning that, so that as an adult, like think about, like, then for ourselves, like the more I do something and I tell myself, I mean, think about it for yourself just now, Patty, like, it's okay. I just did this pattern that hurt somebody or hurt myself for the 10,000th time. And I say, it's okay. Like, no, we can have compassion and like, but forgiveness of ourselves, of like, I forgive that you did that, but it's not okay because it needs to not be continued, right? Like I don't want to tell myself that it's okay. And I think about that too. And I'm like, God, I would do the same. I'd be like, don't worry about it. It's okay. You're all right. But when I thought about like the power of saying, I forgive you, like I'm going to allow you to own that you did something that you're trying to take ownership for. I don't want to take that away from you. Like I want you to go through the process of saying, I am really sorry for that. And me saying like, I forgive you. Because then you can be like, wow, like I took ownership of my crap, but I did receive forgiveness to be able to turn the page and move on. Does that make sense? Do you guys agree with that? I mean, it doesn't have to mean it's law, but I thought it was kind of cool. All right. Any comments before where'd you guys go? Oh, there you are. Any comments before we take a look at this video? Because then we'll have some time after that. It's only 4 minutes. Like any of the steps, did any of the steps resonate with you? Or, I mean, it's a process and like you have to commit to it, but otherwise, if you don't go through this process of forgiveness, it's like, I don't know. I mean, Morgan, like, are you open to sharing any of your, the process that you went through for many years of like self-destructive, kind of behavior that you like at some point had to say, like, I want to turn the page now, Did you go through any like self-forgiveness?
Oh yeah, there's stuff that comes. I mean, there's daily stuff. I spent the whole weekend really breathing and doing steps, and there's stuff that I'm still plugging into, and there's things that come up, and forgiving myself, and then also figuring out why I continue to do some of the things like you were talking about, like a pattern that continues to show up over and over and over again. And this weekend is something I worked on is, why do I allow certain things? And I guess too, I'm sorry, I'm kind of all over the place because I had a lot of crying and my weekend was really long. I did a lot of self stuff. So I'm kind of all over the place and just processing things. But what she did talk about that you mentioned earlier was about like being the martyr for yourself and for other people. And then it also creates like a lot of resentment or hatred or not being able to trust that anybody else can do it, because it's just like, okay, I'll just do it all. I'll do it all. I'll handle it all. You're not going to do it right, and not trusting to allow anybody else to do anything too. And so that's something I've struggled with and have been working on. And especially with like the food and trying to figure out, why some days I eat more than others. And then on the days that I do eat more, are you going to beat yourself up over that today? And why do you want to be in this constant cycle instead of just kind of like, and so what I've been working on is just letting each day be as it is. I don't have to have judgment on the day. I don't have to count every single calorie or every step that I took. I took my watch off for the last week because I started getting obsessed with how many steps I was taking. And then if I wasn't taking enough steps, and then I stopped calculating, I was calculating calories for a little while on my Fitness Pal. But then every day it was either, am I going to be proud of myself today or am I going to be mad at myself today? And if it didn't meet up to my exact standards, then that was my opportunity to, either give myself the check mark and the gold star, or to give myself the "you're horrible" speech. And so, the last couple of weeks, I've gotten rid of my watch. I got rid of my Fitness Pal. And each day is just like, today we're going to just be today. And we're just going to let today be like it is, because I'm someone who's in the process of recovering from needing to control every single aspect of my life, what other people are doing that are in my life. If people aren't doing it the way I would do it, there's so much that I'm trying to do at all times instead of just being in the flow and just going with the day and appreciating it for how it is, knowing that however it is happening today is exactly how it's supposed to be. Whatever lessons are showing up again in my life or patterns or whatever's coming in is something that I'm having to go through again today because it's perfectly perfect for me. And just enjoying the ride instead of trying to, because I'm so obsessed all the time with trying to control everything. And like you said, Chris, like you wanted to get to the very bottom of it. And so all this time and energy is spent like trying to figure it out, or, oh, I'm eating again, or I'm not working out again. And so that's really what like this weekend was for me. And what I've been really kind of working on here lately is just going, it's just today. And tomorrow's just going to be tomorrow. And whatever shows up, shows up. And if I walk more, that's great. If I walk less, that's fine. If I eat more, that's fine. If I eat less, that's fine. But just being consciously aware and making sure that, you're still flowing in a pattern that's healthy and it's with change, because I don't want to start doing a lot of the unhealthy habits again that got me back the other way, but just not being so judgmental of every little thing that comes in. So a really good topic tonight, Chris, for sure, because we talked a lot this weekend about martyr and forgiveness and patterns. So it's all spot on as usual.
I love it. Well, thanks for your openness about all that. And it's just so easy to miss this idea of forgiveness. I like to go straight to, the tears and the struggle and the frustration and the victim and it's like, because it's pain, like it's real pain, and to be able to, I can't even tell you what happened. I was like sobbing as I was like sharing this, like open, like, this is really nasty stuff that I've been doing as long as I can remember. And it's stuff that's like you keep in your closet and you don't tell anybody, and it just eats away at your identity and who you are. And it's just like, I hate it. I want to be over this part, and like it causes me to behave in certain ways that I don't like either. And then I like ruin relationships over it, and it's just like I'm so done with it. And so it was just like, rah, 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 and you don't like, it's so easy to go straight to that instead of, I was challenged. It's almost like the analogy of like putting your big girl pants on, of accept that it is there. It's like that noticing of like, okay, let's not go into the deep black hole that you want to crawl into and stay in for 3, 4, 5 days and not come out because it's called punish time now, that you did this again and you haven't learned your lesson, like, it's like, let's not do that. Let's, like, you're an adult, you're a powerful woman, like put your big girl pants on and let's shine the flashlight on this thing. Let's talk about it and let's figure out how we're not going to do this again. And it starts with not, it's okay. It starts with, I forgive you. I forgive that it happened again, and that I'm still building my skill set and my tools. And I'm going to have to probably most likely suffer some consequences that are going to cause more tears, more pain, more like, because I'm owning this, like, I don't know what's going to happen. But to push it back down and hide it and, apologize for it, like make it something, to not say, I have to take responsibility for this, but I forgive myself and whatever happens, happens. But like, this is important enough for my growth of my spirit, of my soul, of my, like, this is really who Chris is. And the years and years and years of the skeletons that cause me to be somebody that I don't want to be, it means I gotta call myself on the carpet. And after I do, I like suck up the pain, but let it go, you know, like, and forgive it. Like, cause if I don't, what am I going to do? Like, just keep beating myself up for it? Like, how am I going to get past it if I don't accept that it was part of my past and it's part of what kind of caused a series of relationships and, you know, patterns. And but it doesn't mean that it has to be that for the rest of my life. So for me to be able to turn the page, I have to start with, okay, like, I forgive you, but we got to face this thing and not just gloss over it. So I'm with you. Like, I didn't, you know, some nights are going to be heavier than others on LiveFULLy, but this is one of them. What else? Does anybody else have any comments about any of the steps or any of your own experiences about?
I have something,
Yeah.
Chris. You know, the more you share, the more I discover we have some things in common. One is that control nature, the trust issues. It serves me, sometimes it serves me quite well in my work. It's where it is appropriate. Where I'm cautious, and but in other places of my life, it's not. It holds me back and it interferes with my relationships. So, and yes, it's been painful. Being isolated, or isolating myself, feeling shame for repeating patterns that I'm not proud of, and then not, and just and an attempt to protect. I'm not sure who I'm protecting, but I know I don't want to protect. I don't want to bring some of my, I guess, for lack of a better word, baggage into a new relationship. I don't. I don't want it to. I don't want some of the stuff that's inside of me to be replicated. You know, and that. And yeah, I don't trust myself sometimes. You know.
A
So,
lot of times, I imagine.
yeah, I don't trust myself a lot of time, and the. But I don't want what is it? Some of the things that are inside of me. I don't want to be replicated in a family. You know, in a potential family. But okay, I want to shift a little bit. I feel I should tell you this. I love you,
I love
Chris.
you.
I just feel compelled.
Thank you. I love you back.
But I was thinking of the love keeps no record of wrongs. It's in I really like the biblical definition of love. Love is a verb. It is it does a lot of things, but it doesn't keep a record of wrongs. So, and that's what forgiveness, part of what forgiveness is. So, yeah, what you were saying earlier was spot on with regard to, at some point you do have to kind of let it go. You do try to learn from it and let it go. And I guess that's it for right now.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, love. Another thing that I was talking with my coach about earlier too was like when we can let all of the junk go that our ego gets all attached to and spun up in, and the emotions of it and everything that pulls it back in, and the more we can get to who we are as a true self, the less there is to protect, the less there is to defend. There were two other things that are on the list, but it's you don't have to do that anymore because you're in full acceptance of what is you and what's not you, right? Of what, this is not me. This is just something that has happened to me a lot in my life that I haven't been able to process through because I don't have the tool sets built yet. And it seems crazy that I'm 47 and I haven't figured this out yet, but I haven't. So okay, I'm still working on it. So it's there are worse things, right? That I just haven't figured this out, but I don't want to spend 20 more years doing it. In order for me to be in full acceptance, I have to forgive the stuff, to be able to turn the page and move on. I love it. Okay. Let me do this video really quick. Cause I think you're going to love it. And you guys might have already heard about it, before, but if not, it's 4 minutes.
Stephanie here from ProjectLifeMastery.com. In this video, I'm going to share with you guys an ancient Hawaiian healing practice called Ho'oponopono that I recently learned from a great book called Zero Limits by Joe Vitale. And in this book, Joe shares his experience meeting this therapist. And here's a story about this therapist that was able to heal these mentally ill patients that were criminals in a mental institute. And he was able to heal them without even going to visit them. And it was kind of like this urban myth or legend that he heard, and he started to investigate because he was really curious about it. And he found this therapist, and the therapist was using this healing practice that's this ancient Hawaiian, practice that helps people to heal. And the philosophy behind it is that we're responsible for our reality. We're responsible for anything that shows up in our reality, even things that are totally outside of your control. So for example, if somebody, steals from you, you're responsible for that because on some unconscious level, you've attracted that into your life. You've attracted these things into your reality. And this practice helps you understand that, but also helps you heal that. It helps you heal a lot of experiences of your life, but also relationships with other people, other experiences, anything that you attract through this process called cleaning. And that's kind of the way that they look at it. And I'm not really the best at explaining it, but I'm going to share with you guys the prayer or the ritual of what you say, because I find there's a lot of power in that. And I've actually incorporated this into my morning ritual every day and also all throughout the day as well. And it's kind of like a mantra, and I find it really, really powerful. And the way that it works is just using these 4 phrases over and over again. You can repeat them in any order. You say them to yourself in silence, although you can say them out loud. There's no rules to that. But the 4 phrases are, I love you, I'm sorry, forgive me, and thank you. Okay? I love you, I'm sorry, forgive me, and thank you. Now, those 4 phrases, there's a lot of power in them. Okay, there's a lot of healing power in that. I love you, just coming from a place of love. And that's what life is, love. And that's what our Creator is as well. So love, there's so much power in that. And the I'm sorry and forgive me part is, I'm sorry that I'm not aware. I'm sorry for being unconscious. A lot of people, they resist being sorry. There's a lot of ego that comes up around being sorry or taking responsibility or forgiving. A lot of people don't want to take that responsibility on. So there's a lot of power just saying, I'm sorry, forgive me. There's a lot of power in saying thank you. Thank you. That's, one of the ultimate prayers that you can say is just showing thanks and appreciation. And when you access this state, the state of I love you, I'm sorry, forgive me, thank you, it's amazing how much healing that can do in your life. And so it's pretty simple, just say those 4 phrases over and over again. You can say them in any order that you want, but I love you, I'm sorry, forgive me, thank you. I love you, I'm sorry, forgive me, thank you. Just saying that over and over again. Give it a try. Add it to your rituals, add it to your meditation, add it to your mantras, add it to your morning ritual for the day. And if you guys want to know more about it, then I highly recommend the book Zero Limits by Joe Vitale. Great book. I've watched some YouTube videos of him as well, and it's really good stuff. So enjoy, guys. Thanks for watching.
All right. So has anybody heard of that? That it's actually pronounced Ho'oponopono. It's a Hawaiian prayer. No. So if you Google it, this is something that I have practiced. So I was familiar with it before all of this stuff came up about forgiveness. But if you Google it, there are songs. So people, you'll find recordings of people actually singing, I love you, I'm sorry, I forgive you, thank you. There are ones where it's just people will be repeating it. So you can just lie there and listen to it, like as if, it's a meditation or something, and just, put it on. I mean, he talks about writing it down and just kind of saying them over and over to yourself, when you find yourself in a moment where you feel like you need some forgiveness. But it's really powerful. And I mean, don't be surprised if it really drums up, some major emotions, because I mean, think about that. If, I love when he says like what you're sorry for is just not being conscious of it. It's like, you're not, sorry that you did something so terrible. It's like, I'm sorry that I didn't realize again, and then it's like, how damaging can that be when that's the way that you think about, like, the I'm sorry of, like, I'm sorry, I am still working on, becoming conscious of being in this pattern. And then to, come right back and say, I forgive you. Or please forgive me, like that you're asking that of yourself, is really that acceptance of, like, okay, like, let's just accept that it happened. And then at the end, it's thank you. So, yeah, so you can kind of, I mean, there's so many different versions of Ho'oponopono, and literally if you guys just start typing in, like, HOOP, like the rest of it will all come up. Like, you don't have to have the full thing. And then you can just, kind of find, like, what works for you. There was one, the very first one had this girl that was singing and in this, like, super angelic voice, and I was like a train wreck because I was like, but yeah, it works however you want to do it. And so okay, I'll stop there. We got about 8 more minutes left. Any feelings about that, what we talked about, the prayer?
I've got something on all that. That was really good. For a long time, I kept thinking that I needed to forgive other people for things that had happened in my life. Like in my relationship with my boyfriend, I remember talking to somebody, it was Tanya, about where we were, and I was like, I just need to forgive him. If I can just forgive him for those things. And she looked at me and she's like, but have you forgiven yourself? And when I really started doing the work on forgiving myself for allowing the things to happen that happened in that relationship, I was able to start healing. And it wasn't him that I had to forgive. I had to forgive myself for allowing someone to treat me in that way. And at the retreat that I went to this weekend, the girl who ran the retreat, she was abandoned by her mother at a very, very young age. And she talks about going through life and literally attracting friends, people, like anything that came into her life would always leave her. And she talks about how it was her attracting it though, because that was her pattern. That's all she knew. So even though like the number one thing she didn't want to happen into life was to be abandoned by anybody. And that's what kept showing up over and over and over again. And she kept thinking, I'm so mad at my mom. I have to forgive my mom. I have to forgive these people who did this to me. But there was that lesson in there for her as far as like, yeah, maybe originally that created that one time, that pattern, created that for her. But all those other times, that was her attracting it to herself. And so that like what he said at the very beginning, it was just like, yeah, aha, because yeah, and I did that for a long time. Like who do I need to blame for this eating addiction? Like who started this? Who was the first kid who called me fat? Who was the, why did my mom let this food in the house? Why didn't somebody say something? Like, I needed to find who could I put this blame on? And at the end of the day, it's me. It's me. I'm attracting it. I'm still doing it. And so that forgiving ourselves, that's the key. And, Chris, I don't know if I can just say, I forgive me. And then I don't know if it will ever totally be gone or if it's something that's going to continue to show up and I'm going to have to continue the mantra and continue just to say it and let it come up a little bit just so that it's there and be aware of it and be like, okay, there you are again. And we're going to treat you this way this time and move, and turn the page. I don't know if it will ever, for me right now where I am, I don't know if the book will ever be totally closed. Maybe it will show its head and give me the opportunity to continue to turn the page and move forward so that I can regain my power. But good stuff. I'm excited to look into more of that.
It is power is the perfect word. That is what it's about. Like reclaiming our power is what happens when we forgive ourselves and like accept where we've come from, what we ourselves have attracted into our lives as patterns, and are able to own it, see it, notice it, accept it, let it go, turn the page. And what happens is the victim, the martyr, starts to deteriorate. And then as a result, power in ourselves gets bigger and self-esteem gets bigger and self-love gets bigger, right? Like all of the things that is of the true self that he talks about, like that is, we're, made in God's image and likeness. And like he said, like that's who our creator is too. So like that's who we are at the core. So it's like and it's like these little baby steps of each time we go through that process of the forgiveness of, all of the steps, we gain power. Like that is already in us. It's power that we're kind of relinquishing and because we're allowing other things to take over. So yeah, that was perfect. Anybody else? Final thoughts?
I think Jason said something when he was talking about love, and it really hit me that I think for me anyway, I have to learn to love myself enough to forgive myself. I think with me, I have to work on loving myself more so that I can forgive myself.
I don't know which comes first. I know that this last one that I said, be your best friend, the actual title that they gave it was Move Toward Self-Love. And it says the last step in building self-esteem is moving toward loving yourself. Think kind thoughts toward yourself and show yourself some compassion. If we can learn to think of ourselves as our best friend, to speak to ourselves with love and kindness, and put ourselves as a priority, it reaffirms that we believe that we're worth it. So yeah, it's like those kind thoughts. It's the step of give yourself a break. Like what is there to be so hard on yourself about? and it's so easy to do. Like, it's so, that we're just like, oh, like, it's painful and it hurts and I did it again. And I just, when are you going to get this? And, it's like that, it takes courage. Like, I really, really believe that it takes courage to stop yourself in that mode and to say, that's like the big girl pants move, or big boy pants, or whatever. Like, is that I'm not going to go down the spiral, because nothing happens down there that's good, that brings on like positive change. The only thing that can happen is I need to find a way to love. Well, how am I going to find it down there? And all those crappy feelings and emotions and like beating myself up. And so I think like those kind words, stopping and being like, stop it, like it takes courage to do that. Yeah. You have the final word. It's 9:00.
Okay. Well, this is just really quick. I've shared it before, but someone taught me where purpose is not known, abuse is inevitable. So abuse is defined as abnormal use. So I don't know. For some of my patterns are I think are a result of not being really clear on purpose, on the purpose for this thing or that thing, or and so therefore not being clear on purpose leads to using it inappropriately, either at it. And the thing about something that's there's a time and season for everything. Okay, so in one time and season, this action might be appropriate. In another time and season, this action may be inappropriate. And it all comes down to, what is the purpose, understanding purpose, getting really clear on that, and then pursuing it. That's just, I don't know. So for a very practical example, I have clutter. I have clutter in my home, and so I'm always continually struggling against clutter, and I've decided, I said, well, over time, I said, well, this is a workspace. This table is a workspace. It is not a storage space. The tabletop. And
So
go
you've
all
got
over.
your purpose for it.
Purpose for it is this is not a storage location. This is a workspace. So therefore I have to treat it according to its purpose. And see, I have the authority. God's given each of us a great deal of authority over ourselves, over our own life, and to assign purpose, to give it name, to name it, and to assign purpose for it. And but there are other things where God has defined purpose. A greater authority than me. So that's where I look to my God to help me decide and have right perspective, because perspective changes everything. It can affect everything.
It does.
That's it.
All right. Well, thank you. That's good stuff. Purpose is good. And I think that really goes along with that values. I know we got to get on the team call. So I'll post, the steps from this with the recording so that you have that. And also I'll post a document that has a big list of those core values where it really can help you determine like what's really important to me and like, am I in alignment with that, and where you're not. The forgiveness practice. right? Like not beating myself up that I'm not in alignment, but actually going through those steps and saying like, you know, it's okay. It's a work in progress, and we're going to work on it. So I love all you guys. Thank you for jumping on tonight, and we'll get on the team call and have a good week.
Thank you, Chris.
All
Bye-bye.
right. Good night.